Botswana has got a great mining pedigree. It's a great host to a number of different initiatives. But Andrew has had, I think this is your second stint with the company at ACAP, and please taking us back to the geological side and the project development side. Great to see you again.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thanks, Pete and PAC and Laurie. It's been a really good day, and I've heard a lot of stuff that's validated some of the ideas that I'll develop today, actually. So a little bit about the company. We have two main projects. Obviously, the one on the right is what I'll be speaking about today. It's our uranium project, and I'll get into that in a moment. It is a very, very large uranium project. It is low grade, but it is a monster. And then at the same time, we also have a nickel cobalt laterite project just outside the Walloona mine, and we're developing both at the moment. Just a little bit of background about the company. That's all, pretty standard information. But I will come back to a couple of those things later. I was the original managing director of this company, and I made this discovery in Botswana. I was in Botswana looking for gold, and I found uranium, so I don't know, that's perhaps a reflection on me. I left after Fukushima and went back to gold, and I've had a successful gold career around the world and had a lot of fun. And then the chairman of ACAP came back to me and said, with the current change in the market sentiment towards uranium, now's our chance to try and get this into development. And there's no doubt I think about this project as my baby. As an explorer, you don't make many discoveries, and I'm very proud to have my name on this one. I just want to reflect on some things that people just talked about. I'm really pleased I left this slide in. We're about to get 8 nuclear reactors. We're buying 8 subs with nuclear reactors in them, right? So that's the first step. And what was the big public reaction at that time? Oh my God, we've upset France. Where are we going to get our brie? Who cares, right? Because in reality, what we had done is buy nuclear submarines from France and de-engineer them. It's like buying a howitzer from America and then giving the guys in the army a slingshot. It was a joke. It was a disgrace what we were doing to our servicemen. To buy nuclear subs and de-engineer them back to diesel was an absolute disgrace. So we're buying nuclear subs. And this, as a scientist, I love this because this is where you explain to people how great nuclear power is. How often do we have to refuel a nuclear sub that lasts for 50 years? Never. They go for the life of the submarine. We never refuel it. When people understand that is the difference between changing the electrons on the outside of the atom and what goes on inside the atom. As a scientist, it still makes me shiver. It's a fantastic industry, and I'm very proud to be part of it. And then socially, and I use it different because she's always angry, But when Greta came out and spoke recently in favour of uranium and continuing on in nuclear power plants in Germany, I felt that was a seminal moment for us. We have to take advantage of that. We have to take advantage of the changing attitudes of the young people. Okay? This is the planet that they're going to inherit. They're all pretty stressed about it. Geologically, right, in 1 million years, it won't matter. We'll be gone and the planet will be okay. We can't destroy the planet. But we can certainly destroy their future, and I've been really delighted that young people are starting to engage. Have a look at, and here's some other things for those of you who want to educate yourselves about this. Oliver Stone just made a uranium movie, Nuclear, A New Look, showed it at the Cannes Film Festival, right? Oliver Stone, JFK, Platoon, a famous film director, okay? UK Greens for Nuclear have made a 45-minute documentary talking about the conversion of hardcore Greens into the nuclear industry. It's just search Greens for Nuclear. It's a 45-minute, and it addresses waste, it addresses danger, it addresses accidents. It's a fantastic film. So, if you've got people and you want to educate yourself to take this message broader, there's some great resources there, and come and speak to me later. So our project's a monster. We discovered it in about 2005, and we drilled around 200 kilometres of drilling into it. It's a very big, it's on an unconformity at the base of the Karoo, but it is not an unconformity related deposit. It's a sandstone hosted deposit. We've got a massive resource, but I'll talk a little bit about that because we're in the process of restarting work after a very long layoff. Effectively, the company didn't do much post-Fukushima. It did some really important work, but it did very little more exploration or work on the resource, and that's about to restart. And so we traditionally have talked about it at the 100 ppm cutoff, but I think soon we'll look to revise that cutoff up, and of course that affects the contained pounds, but it significantly affects the grade as well. In Botswana, it's on the eastern side of the country. That's where all the population live, and it's on some pretty good infrastructure. This feasibility study, which was produced to the government in 2016, is really no longer worth the paper that it's written on. The whole world has changed, okay? You know, everyone's talked about this today, but all the input costs have changed significantly. And I've come back with the sole purpose, mandated by the board, which I've just joined, to redo this feasibility study around a whole bunch of new parameters. So don't worry too much about that, except for the outcome of the feasibility study. Because the outcome of the feasibility study was that we also did an EIA, which was accepted by the government, and that the feasibility study was important because it got us a granted mining licence. So we have a fully granted mining licence, we have a government accepted environmental impact assessment, which will require some modification. And at the same time, we drilled out a giant water bore, and we have permits and access for all the water that we'll need. And always remember in mining that every tonne of ore roughly requires a tonne of water. And when you have a big deposit in a desert country, that's a lot of water. Luckily for us, the Karoo, which is where this geology is hosted, there's a lot of water. So we're okay for that. And there's one of the pillars of the mining lease. So I hadn't been back to Botswana for a long time, and the mining lease was granted. And I was very delighted to stand next to one of the pillars of the mining lease because it's a 25-year lease. So that gives us a fantastic security in what I would argue is one of the best mining jurisdictions in the world. You know, the whole GDP of Botswana is predicated on mining. Diamonds, more previously gold, nickel, fantastic work being done in the Kalahari Copper Belt recently, and coal, which, you know, 1800s technology, let's get rid of it, and uranium soon. The project is amazingly put for infrastructure, given that it's in the Kalahari. The project, the eastern end of the project, which outcrops, so it outcrops in the east and dips at 1 degree towards the west. So by the time we go out of the mining lease, it's about 70 metres deep. And the eastern edge of the project comes right to the road. The railway line's about 30 metres west of the road, so it comes right under the railway line. We're on the main power grid, and the ground is, as my good old dad would say, as flat as a shit carter's hat. There's not a hill, there is nothing to worry about. You know, it is. We own the surface rights already. We've taken control of the surface rights. So there's just so much to love about this project because a big project requires good infrastructure and really becomes a logistical project in itself. So in 2010, and this is where I want to go back to probably the last significant thing that I did before leaving the company. We did a study on upgrading, and I was really here, you know, there's a few people today that have talked about and very significantly what goes on at the Tyrus project. I mean, that's an amazing upgrade, and Will Goddard's done, you know, amazing work there, and we're really aware of his work. And this geology is not the same, but we, in very rudimentary test work, got a very significant upgrade. So we doubled the grade in test work on a really clapped out sorter in the back of ALS, a radiometric sorter in the back of ALS in 2010. That work was not considered as part of the feasibility study. It was never incorporated. So we just used a run-of-mine grade, and what did we end up with? We end up with a giant low-grade deposit that goes onto a heap leach. Brandon talks a lot about heap leaches and how fantastic they are, but if you've been, and they do work, and I don't want to knock them, but they also have a lot of problems as well, and there's a lot of risk involved in heap leaches. So our goal is to take the feasibility study and do a bunch of test work now on various beneficiation routes. So we're looking at radiometric sorting. That's where you put the stuff over a belt and use radiometric sensors to say, is it radioactive? It has uranium in it, we want that, or is it not radioactive? Now, because our our uranium minerals are quite fine grained, there's some issues around how effective that is, and that might double our grade. But we also know, and this one's the really exciting one for us, hyperspectral. We know that through our feasibility study test work, we've got some minerals in there that consume a lot of acid. You need acid to leach the uranium, but before the acid attacks the uranium minerals, it attacks these other minerals, and that wastes a lot of acid that's not doing any work for us. So we believe that we can, and they're not really carbonates, they're mostly a mineral called zeolite, which is a metamorphosed form of feldspar. So, and who cares, right? You don't need to worry about that. We believe that we can identify those minerals hyperspectrally and kick them out in a similar sorting process. So we're not trying to upgrade the uranium, we're trying to throw out things that don't have uranium in them and that drive up our acid costs. I think this is an absolute game changer for us because we know we can sort it radiometrically and roughly double the grade. If we can throw out stuff that will hurt our costs, that will further raise the grade. And we're also looking at other methods, XRT, X-ray tomography. We're even going to look at some good old-fashioned spirals because obviously uranium is extremely dense, second densest element known. So we're looking at that. If that work comes off, and we're about to commence that work, then we see improvements in the feed grade, the throughput, drop in acid consumption, yada, yada, yada. Lots of good things happen, right? The holy grail for me is to get the ROM, the run-of-mine grade, above 600 ppm. Because at that point, you can feasibly go from a heap leach to a tank leach. And then you're in control of your life. In a heap leach, what happens is you pile all the stuff up on the ground and you put acid on it and you walk away and you hope to God that everything goes all right. You can't adjust the chemistry. You can't mess around with it. If you put it in a tank, you can change, you can add iron, you can add oxygen, you can mess with the chemistry and you can improve your recoveries. So tanks are always better. That's the Tricopy mini plant, I think, on the left, and that was a big trial heap leach in France. And I'm pretty sure that that's the Letlhakane. I just snagged that one off the internet, so thanks, Paladin, or whoever owns it now, Elevate. Yeah. Their tank leach, so thank you very much for that. But, one is highly preferable, there's no doubt about that. The good news for us, though, is all of the work that I'm doing is really only concerning the front end of the process route. The whole extraction of the uranium from the liquor and how we turn it into uranium oxide, etc., that shouldn't change. All I'm looking to do is change the front end of the process route. I'm not looking to change our mining process, which will be surface mining. There's no drill and blast here. The strip ratios are less than 6:1, and in the early days, the strip ratios are virtually nil. The ore body outcrops for several kilometres, and we will strip that away because the oxide is not really what we want. So that's where I'm looking to make changes in the feasibility study. And as I say, that work will start in January. I had hoped that it would start this month, but it has taken me time to start rebuilding my team in Botswana, which was predicated around starting a new expat. This is where our project sits, okay? It is a massive project. The bigger projects are out on the right, the higher grade projects are up above. You can see Paladin, has a lot of both. ACAP, that's where we look at it at the 100 ppm cutoff. And if we drop our cut, or if we raise our cutoff to 200 ppm, then we're still around 200 million pounds of uranium, so still a massive deposit, but our grade is above 300 ppm. So I know just on the basis of my radiometric sorting, I'm almost, if I double, I'm almost at the 600 ppm that I need. And that doesn't count for the hyperspectral and everything else that I'm planning to do. I'm going to show you in a second, and I'll explain why. But a comparison between ACAP and what I consider to be a near peer, okay, Bannerman, both southern African countries, both large resources, both low grade, the difference in our market caps is quite remarkable. Okay, now their market cap is well over 300 million, ours is 100 million. Okay, that's a reflection on the fact that Brandon Munro is a jet and he's got a big profile in the uranium industry, and you've all hopefully listened to him today. And every time I listen to Brandon, I hope he's listening now because I'm pumping his tyres. He's very good and he's been promoting this company, but ACAP has not had a CEO effectively since 2017. So there's been no promotion of the company. When I talk to people in North America, they don't know who, they're, what, 300 million pounds? Are you joking? Never heard of it. So we believe that there's a lot of upside in this price, okay, in our market cap. We think Bannerman's a good proxy for us in many ways, and we would say, even without anything else. I just want to reflect on a quick story. After I finished my PhD in 1996, I think I went and worked for Paladin, and I ran Paladin's gold arm. And just like I didn't find a lot of gold in Botswana, I didn't find much for Paladin either, and that's why it's known more as a uranium company. Nevertheless, at that time, John Borshoff got into my brain about uranium. And he's like, this is the thing, we've got to do this. With all the things that you hear today, he was talking about in the mid-90s. And he was a prophet, and a crazy prophet at that. And at that time, Paladin was on its knees. Paladin had a market cap of $10 million and was worth 1 cent in the market. And this guy called Rick Rule turns up, and he and John hatched a plan about John's vision for nuclear energy, and Rick Rule funded Paladin at a cent in the late 90s. And he was a super patient guy because nothing happened for a long time. But ultimately, the uranium price started to kick up and Paladin went to $10. Now, I've spoken to Rick and he was out way before $10, but he became the most successful uranium investor and the one that everyone listens to. And I would just like to reflect on something that he said in the media the other day, and that is, all mines have risks, but only big mines will make you big money. Okay? Letlhakane is going to be a big mine. Is going to be, my wife says, I can't say gonna. It's going to be a big mine. Our goal with the revised feasibility study is to be producing 4 to 5 million pounds per annum, which will make us one of the 10 biggest mines in the year, from a resource reserve, which we haven't defined at the moment, so I shouldn't say too much, but around 120 million pounds of our highest, best grade, nearest to the surface stuff. And when your global resource is 360, that's not a big ask, in my opinion. So we believe that we have the licensing, the community acceptance, all the things in place that can turn this from a big mine. And I know the guys in the Athabasca, they're chirping about grade, and good on them, because if I was there, I would too, right? But the biggest and one of the most successful uranium mines in the world forever was Rossing, right? And Rossing's head grade is 320 ppm, and they produced for 50 years, and they're still producing. Okay, they had low mining costs, they had good met and everything else. This has a similar potential. This is an enormous project, and don't be the guy who didn't buy ACAP at 10 cents, all right? Thank you very much.
Thank you. I was caught up in the emotion of all that.
Thank you, Laurie.
Especially when you get geology mixed with metallurgy, it's something I dream about. But anyway, look, is there any particular questions right now? I'll allow one because I want to get to the next stories and certainly the brand, which is going to be a real feature presentation. But anything?
Andrew, timing on newsflow and some of this
Sure.
beneficiation work?
So we realised that we had some sample at Ansto that we lost in the mist of time. So we're starting some preliminary cider test beneficiation work immediately on that. But realistically, we will start drilling in January, 3,000 metres, which is a lot of holes when your ore body's deep as 70 metres, to collect PQ sample for met tests. So we'll start drilling in January, and we'll have all of that to the labs probably by March, so second quarter, late in the second quarter for the beneficiation results. But I'm hoping to have some preliminary results before them. And of course, we get our assays immediately from radiometrics, and we're looking at not just twinning known holes, but looking at in some detail about how the channels work and where the high-grade opportunities are. So there'll be news flow from that. There's also quite a bit of news flow to come in the next few months from Wilconi, our nickel cobalt project in WA, our JV partners in administration. That's bad for them, but good for us because it gives us the opportunity to acquire 100% of that for a cash bid instead of earning in, and we think that's a real opportunity for us as well. So news flow has been a bit slower than I would like, but it's about to start. Thanks, Pete. Thank you very much.
Terrific.